Shohei Ohtani had faced enormous pressure throughout his career, but the reception waiting for him inside Rogers Center was completely different. Nearly 2 years after rejecting Toronto and signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers, Ohtani entered the World Series surrounded by thousands of Blue Jays supporters who had not forgotten that decision. The crowd did not welcome him as an ordinary opposing player. They treated him as the superstar who had allowed an entire city to believe he was coming before choosing another team at the final moment. The disappointment surrounding Ohtani's decision had remained inside Toronto since December 2023. Blue Jays fans had followed private plane reports, social media rumors, and speculation suggesting the Japanese superstar might select their organization. For several hours, some supporters believed the most talented player in baseball was traveling toward Canada. That excitement disappeared when Ohtani announced that he had signed his historic contract with Los Angeles. The frustration never completely vanished, and the World Series finally gave Toronto an opportunity to express it directly. Before Game 1 had even begun, Ohtani was loudly booed during the player introductions. Cameras immediately focused on him, expecting frustration, discomfort, or an attempt to ignore the hostility. Instead, Ohtani appeared to smile as the sound traveled through the stadium. It was a brief reaction, but it immediately attracted attention because it showed that he understood exactly why the crowd had targeted him. Rather than becoming angry, Ohtani seemed almost entertained by the emotional energy surrounding his arrival. That smile created the first major debate of the night. Some Dodgers fans believed Ohtani was laughing because the boos motivated him and confirmed how much Toronto still cared about losing him. Blue Jays supporters argued that their reaction had nothing to do with jealousy and everything to do with defending their own team on baseball's largest stage. Others believed the entire situation demonstrated the unusual influence Ohtani carries. Very few players can create such an emotional response in a city where they have never played a regular season home game. Once the game began, Toronto attempted to prevent the atmosphere from becoming another Ohtani celebration. The Blue Jays repeatedly changed pitchers and gave him different looks from both sides of the mound. Ohtani struck out twice and failed to capitalize on an early bases-loaded opportunity. Toronto gradually took control of the game, attacking the Dodgers' pitching staff and building a commanding advantage. With each successful inning, the crowd became louder and increasingly confident that the team Ohtani had rejected could defeat him when it mattered most. However, Ohtani still produced the moment Toronto had feared. In the 7th inning, with Los Angeles already facing a large deficit, he launched a towering 2-run home run to right field. The blast did not place the Dodgers close enough to complete an immediate comeback, but it reminded the Blue Jays why their organization had once wanted him so desperately. Even during a difficult night, Ohtani could change the atmosphere with one swing. The crowd's celebration temporarily became silence as he rounded the bases. Toronto eventually carried an 11-4 lead into the 9th inning, moving only 3 outs away from winning the opening game of the World Series. Ohtani came to the plate for one final appearance with the result appearing almost decided. That was when the crowd delivered the comment that transformed the game into a much larger controversy. Thousands of supporters began chanting, "We don't need him," directing every word toward the Dodgers superstar standing inside the batter's box. The chant carried several different meanings. It celebrated a Blue Jays team that had reached the World Series without Ohtani and was now defeating the organization he had selected. It also expressed the pain Toronto fans had experienced during the confusing free agency rumors surrounding his decision. Most importantly, it attempted to communicate that the city had finally moved forward. Yet the fact that thousands of people were still chanting about Ohtani suggested that he remained deeply connected to their emotions almost 2 years later. Ohtani did not step out of the batter's box and respond to the crowd. He did not argue, gesture toward the stands, or allow the moment to interrupt his preparation. He eventually drew a walk and moved toward first base while Toronto attempted to complete the victory. Dave Roberts later suggested that Ohtani might not have clearly heard or understood the chant because he was concentrating on the plate appearance. According to Roberts, Ohtani is extremely effective at separating outside distractions from his immediate responsibility. Roberts described Ohtani as someone who can compartmentalize pressure better than almost anyone. The Dodgers manager did not believe boos normally affected him or provided additional motivation. Ohtani understood why Toronto supporters were angry, but he did not appear interested in turning their reaction into a personal confrontation. His responsibility was to evaluate the pitcher, reach base, and give Los Angeles another opportunity. Everything happening beyond the field could be addressed only after the game had ended. The Blue Jays completed the 11-4 victory, giving Toronto an explosive beginning to the World Series. The fans celebrated as though the result had justified every painful memory surrounding Ohtani's free agency. Their team had defeated the Dodgers, neutralized most of Los Angeles' lineup, and publicly declared that it no longer needed the player who had chosen another destination. For one night, the statement appeared extremely powerful. Toronto was 3 victories away from a championship, while Ohtani and the Dodgers were forced to absorb a humiliating opening defeat. Even several Blue Jays players avoided fully supporting the chant when reporters questioned him afterward. George Springer acknowledged Ohtani's extraordinary ability and described him as one of baseball's greatest players. Toronto manager John Schneider praised the passion of the crowd, but was careful not to insult the Dodger superstar. The players understood that Ohtani did not need additional motivation. They also knew that openly disrespecting him could become dangerous if the series reached another important moment. The debate grew larger when the series continued the following night. Ohtani was booed again and heard another version of the same chant as he led off Game 2. This time, the Dodgers responded with a 5-1 victory, tying the World Series before returning to Los Angeles. Ohtani finished with 1 hit in 4 at-bats, but the hostile Toronto crowd could no longer celebrate a commanding series advantage. The confrontation was now moving toward Dodger Stadium, where Ohtani would finally be asked to explain how he felt. Many expected Ohtani to deliver a serious response. He could have described the chant as disrespectful, accused Toronto supporters of remaining bitter, or explained that choosing Los Angeles had already been proven correct. He could also have ignored the question completely and focused on the next game. Instead, Ohtani produced an unexpectedly personal answer involving his wife. The emotional tension created by thousands of angry fans was transformed into humor with one carefully delivered sentence. Ohtani said it had been a great chant and joked that his wife had particularly appreciated hearing it. The comment immediately surprised reporters because it revealed that the hostile message had reached beyond the field. Rather than admitting that the chant had hurt or angered him, Ohtani turned it into a private joke shared with his family. His response appeared relaxed, but it also raised a much larger question. Was Ohtani genuinely amused, or was humor simply the most effective way to hide how deeply the moment had affected him? Ohtani's comment immediately changed the emotional direction of the controversy. Toronto supporters had attempted to embarrass him, but he responded by praising the chant and joking that his wife had enjoyed hearing it. He did not insult the Blue Jays, criticize their fans, or claim the hostility had motivated him. Instead, he transformed an aggressive message into a light-hearted family joke, making it extremely difficult for anyone to continue the confrontation. That response created a massive debate among fans. Some believed Ohtani was genuinely amused and respected Toronto's passionate atmosphere. Others argued that humor was his way of hiding the disappointment created by thousands of people publicly rejecting him. Dodgers supporters viewed the smile as confidence, while Blue Jays fans believed their chant had reached him emotionally. Ohtani offered no further explanation, leaving both sides free to interpret his reaction differently. The most important response, however, arrived during Game 3 at Dodger Stadium. Ohtani opened the game with a double, later added another double, and launched 2 home runs. Toronto's pitchers eventually became so concerned about facing him that they repeatedly threw around the strike zone. By the end of the 18-inning battle, Ohtani had reached base 9 times, matching one of the rarest achievements in Major League history. 4 of those plate appearances resulted in intentional walks. The Blue Jays team, whose supporters had declared that it did not need Ohtani now, appeared unwilling to challenge him. Every time he approached the plate, Toronto was forced to consider whether pitching to him was worth the risk. The chant had attempted to reduce his importance, but the strategy used against him showed exactly how much fear his presence created. Freddie Freeman eventually ended the game with a walk-off home run in the 18th inning, giving Los Angeles a 6-5 victory. The game lasted more than 6 hours and became one of the most exhausting World Series contests ever played. Ohtani's performance did not require an angry speech or a direct response to Toronto. His 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and 9 trips to base provided a far more powerful answer. The debate continued because Ohtani never behaved as though the chant had become personal. He smiled when Toronto booed him, joked when reporters asked about it, and then returned to preparing for the next game. That emotional control has always been one of the most difficult parts of his personality to understand. Fans can see the enormous pressure surrounding him, but they rarely know how deeply he experiences it. The series eventually returned to Toronto for a decisive Game 7. Los Angeles completed a dramatic comeback and captured its 2nd consecutive World Series championship. The Blue Jays had come within 1 victory of proving they could win without Ohtani, but the player they had once pursued ultimately celebrated another championship with the Dodgers inside Rogers Center. The chant that began as a declaration of independence became part of a painful ending for Toronto. Ohtani never demanded an apology and never attempted to humiliate the opposing fans. His response remained the same from the opening boos to the final celebration: stay calm, focus on baseball, and allow performance to control the conversation. Whether his smile represented amusement, hidden emotion, or complete confidence may never be known. But once the World Series ended, the debate had produced one undeniable conclusion. Toronto's fans may have said they did not need Ohtani, but they could never make him irrelevant. That is the end of the video. Do you believe Ohtani genuinely enjoyed the chant, or was he hiding how deeply it affected him? Share your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to subscribe for more Dodgers news, Ohtani updates, and the biggest stories from Major League Baseball.